Hello, I'm Barbara Allen and I've been working in the area of high sensitivity for quite some time now. I first read Elaine Aron's books in the late 90s, early 2000s, so I've known about the trait for a long time and been working consciously with HSPs for well over 20 years now. And today I wanted to talk to you about a theme that I want to introduce HSPs to, which is the no-nonsense HSP. It's something that I feel is very important for HSPs to think on at the moment. There's been quite a while, I think, that we've all been, as HSPs, working on our personal development, finding ways to heal from past wounds and so on, and there's a lot of help out there at the moment for us, and this is a very good thing. Thanks to Dr. Elaine Aron, there's a lot more science out there to help explain our trait. And so my thoughts are now running to, so now that we know, now that we have access to ways to improve our well-being and to get to know ourselves as we actually are, what happens next? And this is what leads me to the theme of the no-nonsense HSP. How do we live our lives in a very meaningful, productive and purposeful way, now that we know? So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the purpose of the HSP in the bigger picture. We are individuals, we live often within families, we live in communities and societies, but what role do we have in those places? As HSPs, sometimes I think if life is hard, we sometimes think, you know, how important am I really? And I wanted to give the message really to you that you are actually vital. You're vital in maintaining a balance in the world. There are 80% in the world who are not like us. We make up to about 20% of the population, and there are over 100 species that share our trait. So, you know, we're supposed to be here. And the question is, what are we supposed to be doing while we're here? Well, one of the things that we're supposed to be doing, from my position, is to impart and explain wisdom, and to remind everyone that there is a bigger picture. Nowadays, when you look at the dominant culture that we live in, it's a very short-term kind of life. So quick gains, short-term thinking, and maybe not quite enough attention given to the longer term and the bigger picture. If we look at, you know, the importance of environmental work nowadays, you know, a lot of people have been warning about this, but it's only now that the majority of people are really beginning to take it seriously, that there is something we need to do differently in order to look after the planet that's our home. So what we're there for is not necessarily on such large issues as that, but we are there to point things out, to share our observations. This is what we do very well. Our nervous system is built to notice all the subtleties. We have the capacity to analyse all sorts of things that are going on around us. This is why we notice everything, and that can be quite tiring. I think being overstimulated is something that most HSPs will say, oh yes, I've been there, I've done that. But it's actually okay, because being able to notice all these things, being aware of all these things, is a sign that your nervous system is working as it's supposed to. What we do need to do is to have a no-nonsense approach to how we take those things on board and what we do with them. So are the things that we notice helpful? Is there a message there? Is there something that it is our role to pass on? Because while we are noticing things, we may be doing something that the majority are not. And if they are not noticing, someone really needs to plant the seed and say, have you realised? And we might do this in small ways. We might do this in our families. When we notice something, we notice a need, we notice a trend, we foresee something. Being quiet just because other people haven't noticed or they don't understand what you mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to stay quiet. It's okay to plant seeds. We're there to remind people and to encourage respect for accumulated wisdom. Over the millennia, there have been a lot of teachers out there, and they've accumulated wisdom by using their deep processing, by pondering things, small and big. And I think it's very easy in such a busy world for people to forget how important it is to look at the accumulated wisdom of the millennia and to see where our everyday values come from. We also have a unique capacity to provide a space for others to think and feel more deeply. So a lot of HSPs say, I could be just standing at a bus stop and next thing I know, someone's told me their whole life story. Well, they tell you for a reason. It's because they can, because you're approachable, and because you have a natural interest and curiosity in other human beings. It's how you're made. You're very capable of it. But there are other factors involved. When you are a good listener, you're also able to observe, and it's an opportunity to impart maybe one little piece of wisdom, one little piece of encouragement that might help someone to see the bigger picture. We also have an opportunity, because of our depth of processing, to model values that ensure survival and ensure progress for the species in the long term. I don't think we always realise that, as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, you think too much. Well, yes, we do. And there's a reason why we need to be doing that. While everyone's very busy out there being productive, put that in parentheses, while they're being very productive, someone has to be doing the thinking about what next. And that falls very naturally to HSPs. An HSP who is trying to follow the others into an obsession with productivity rather than doing the thinking that you're capable of, you're actually not being a no-nonsense HSP. What happens is you are being distracted. And it's very easy to be distracted because the goals of the dominant culture are taught to us as if they are the only way to do things sometimes. And the fact of life is, for sensitive people, that we actually need to do life differently. And when we do life differently, we're more useful to the majority. So I want to encourage you to think about the wonderful gift of being different. One of our roles is to warn, to notice, to signal danger, and to predict. And often I think it's very easy to get mixed up with anxiety states that are caused by overstimulation and worries about being different, and actual messages and signals that we're picking up quite naturally about when something is not okay. If you are part of the population that is responsible in evolutionary terms for pointing out dangers or for predicting things, then if you ignore your feelings, if you ignore those thoughts, that could mean that your voice is stopped and the majority lose your voice amongst all the others. So I would encourage you, if you are experiencing anxiety, to remember that some anxiety is about areas of personal development that we need to do some work on. But actually in the natural state, HSPs also pick up on dangers, and they do notice them, they do think about them, and then they signal them to others. Whether others listen is not our business, in a way. It's very important not to invest in the outcome of your messages, but to gently put out there your thoughts is part of the role of being a no-nonsense HSP. One of the things that I love the most about being a mature HSP is the way in which we have the capacity to encourage creativity, new ideas. We have patience and integrity in dealing with complex problems. We have a way of being able to think about multiple facets of a problem at the same time. One of the reasons that we sometimes take a while to make decisions is because we simply are looking at things in a far more complex way than most people. So when we come to making a decision or giving advice, it's often very well thought through, and in the long term, often the best decision. So as Elaine Aron says, HSPs often make the best decisions, and making decisions on behalf of other people is something that we're very good at too. But if we are somehow feeling so different to everyone that we think we have nothing to offer, again, our voice is missing. A no-nonsense HSP realises that their voice also matters. It's important to put it out there. Elaine Aron often talks about priestly advisors, that there are the warrior kings and there are the priestly advisors, and she often talks about HSPs in the light of being those priestly advisors who quietly sit there in the background. We're not noisy, we're not aggressive, we're very gently thinking on things, and then when the time is right, we say something and contribute. That is something it's very difficult to do if you underestimate your own importance in your family, in society. If you see your difference as something, as a weakness, then what might happen is that you become zipped up, that you fail to say what has meaning for you. And you decide it doesn't have any meaning because other people don't seem to get it at the time. But please don't underestimate the capacity for others. Even if they don't understand something in the moment, they will look back and remember what you say. And it is worth saying. Just say it. Don't invest in other people's response to it. Just simply say what has heart and meaning for you. Speak your truth. In a nice way, in a gentle way. That's the way that HSPs like to do things. Just try it. Things that make us more likely to turn into no-nonsense HSPs, the sort of HSPs that most people wouldn't recognise when you look at all the web pages out there at the moment. But one of the things that's important for HSPs to be able to have is time between tasks, having downtime, not rushing. In a world where productivity and speed is kind of hailed as the way to be, it's really important to try not to get carried along with that. So taking time between tasks, creating time out. You need more time out than most people. And taking the longer route to your goals. Your route will be different to the majority. It's natural. So if your route seems to be a little bit more windy-bendy than other people's, don't worry about that. It's actually the way that you get to where you're going. Your route is a little more complex, and some of that journey has to take place away from the others. Create time for your own processing, sharing wisdom, perhaps with other HSPs if you can, and listen to your intuition. One of the things that I think therapy can be quite useful for is to begin to listen to your intuition and to know what is intuition and what is reactive emotional responses. So a lot of sensitive people, I think, doubt their intuition. They doubt their emotional response simply half the time just because it's so intense. But it's important to be able to differentiate between what your intuition is telling you and what is a reaction to anxiety or messages that you're getting from elsewhere. Read materials and listen to teachings that are actually of help with you and align to you being the best sensitive person that you can be. We often, I think, look to self-help books, and we might read newspapers that sort of tell us how we should be. But it's really important, I think, to read materials that are aligned to highly sensitive people and the pursuit of the journey towards full-time development. So be choosy about what you read and about the goals that you accept. We do need time for healing of wounds. When your nervous system is so open to the subtleties around you, when someone perhaps creates a wound with you, perhaps an experience, or someone else is not in a good place, we can sustain wounds. And I think, again, the dominant culture feels that you should be able to shrug these things off because that's what they do. It's not actually necessary, but you do need to schedule time to heal wounds, and if necessary, seek support so that you can do so. It also helps, I think, to choose environments that align with our values as highly sensitive people, and balancing environments carefully so that we can stay well. We also need to be in environments where different perspectives are heard. So although we might be different to the dominant culture, we also need to be a part of it at times, so that we rub up against different opinions, different perspectives. This then enables us to be able to consider in a subtle way more and more people, more and more views and ways of doing things. It's really important, I think, to also promote something which I feel HSPs in particular know, but we feel maybe a bit weird saying it, and that is that everything is connected. Somehow, whether we're spiritually based or not, as a sensitive person, there's always part of a kind of spiritual life going on within an HSP. And there's something about HSPs, they just have always known that everything is connected. And I think it's important to show that intuition, to speak that intuition in the different ways that we express ourselves. There is knowledge within us in a spiritual sense, whether we're scientifically minded, whether we have other ways of looking at the world. We all have some kind of spiritual depth. This is facilitated by our depth of processing. And if we feel that everything is connected, we must behave as if it is. If everyone realised that everything was connected, we wouldn't be having an environmental crisis at the moment. So it is important that we recognise our capacity to see connection where it is. We need also, I feel, in order to be a no-nonsense HSP, recognise that a lot of sensitive people are late bloomers. So it's a characteristic, and it's normal for us to take the winding path. It's quite normal for us to take longer to decide what kind of career we want to do, what kind of education we would like. And for those of you who are parents perhaps of highly sensitive children, recognise that it is normal for sensitive teenagers perhaps to take time out from education sometimes so that they can make better decisions. I've met so many young adults who have taken the wrong path through college or university and are having to do the whole thing again because they realised that they were more choosing things because it was seen by the dominant culture as something that you should pursue, when actually in their heart they knew it was something else. So it is normal to take time to choose careers, to choose life choices, whether someone wants to get married or not, perhaps, whether someone wants to have children or not. These are all things that actually matter a great deal. And there are some things that just because we can doesn't mean we should. So just because we are extremely good at maths, does this mean that we have to pursue a career that's more left brain, when actually perhaps as a sensitive person we need to take that ability into an area that is maybe less popular or not seen as so successful. We're needed in the areas where we're needed, and that's what we need to do, is to follow our heart there. But you need time in order to make those choices and decisions. As parents, we have a responsibility to make sure that our children do have that time, and that if they happen to be sensitive people who need to do a career that's a little bit different, we give them the support to find what that is and to make up their minds slowly. Now, when it comes to being a no-nonsense HSP, there are things that can get in the way. So people will call them roadblocks. I call them distractions and counterproductive behaviour. Something that we all do from time to time. And we learn again a lesson, I guess, about what distracts us from our purpose. So things that can be distracting, that can delay progress on the journey of a highly sensitive person. Not reading useful information about your trait. Not having read Elaine Aron's book is a roadblock. Her books and her writing and her research have opened up the world to highly sensitive people. They have reframed what we're here for, how we operate, what we need, and how to take care of ourselves, and importantly, what we bring to the majority. If we don't take time to read them, we're missing out because we're slowing our journey down. We are slowing down the journey to being a no-nonsense, productive HSP out there. So books from Elaine Aron, Ted Zeff on self-care, very, very good book. Cheryl Richardson, Brene Brown, they all have messages, I feel, that are made for highly sensitive people. If we fail to prioritise our finances for self-care and healing, perhaps if we've grown up in a way that has somewhat diminished our empowerment, if we fail to use our finances to heal well, this again will delay us fulfilling our purpose as HSPs out there. We can't bring the wisdom, we can't contemplate complex matters and be helpful out there if we are still undermining ourselves with negative framing, with unhealed wounds. So when it comes to decisions, often that we take it with family and partners, can I afford to do this healing, to pay someone to assist me? Do really consider what the world is going to be like if you don't. Not just for you, but for everyone that you could be influencing in a positive way. You could be using your strength to help others to be doing some very creative things out there. It's also important to curtail the way that we as HSPs buy into the philosophies of the dominant culture, bending ourselves out of shape, meeting the needs of others, family and partners in a way that is not suitable for us. So meeting needs of others is something that we are particularly good at, but I think we often listen to the dominant culture in how that has to be done. So we don't take enough rest in between, we don't give ourselves time to do the thinking, and we certainly rarely think that we're right when we get our intuition. it's really very difficult for anyone to take seriously the good things that you say if you sound doubtful. So it's important to have some confidence in a gentle way, in a positive way, when you say your opinion. It's okay for someone else to have a different opinion to you. It's okay if they don't understand. But if we fail to speak because we are worried that being misunderstood might mean we're wrong, then our level of doubt is too high. Being able to trust in our own integrity is a vital part of being a no-nonsense HSP. Focusing on feelings and empathic vibrations to the exclusion of processing the meaning and purpose of these in the bigger picture can be a distraction. And so I think for HSPs who find themselves to be extremely feelings-based, at the same time as feeling overwhelmed, we often fail to process what those feelings are telling us. So our purpose then becomes a false one. We want to just not feel things instead. We want to put them away or manage them rather than listen to them. So an example would be, maybe we sit very quietly feeling upset about things that are going on in the world. Why do we stay quiet? We might just wrestle with the feelings over and over again, but part of the healing process from things that happen out there in the world and that impact us is to speak about it. It's okay to say, that thing that happened, I find it disturbing. And if someone says, well, it's just one of those things, well, it's okay to say, but it's not just one of those things. These are real people being affected. Someone has to say these things, and to some extent it's our job to be the first ones to say it. That can be a bit of a lonely place, and if everybody disagrees with you, yes, I can see why you might think, oh, maybe I'm weird for saying that. But actually, no. Genetically speaking, our trait emphasizes noticing the subtleties, and those subtleties help us to know either when something is dangerous, when something needs to be done, when someone needs something and needs to be responded to. So it's important that we respond to what's going on inside. There are quite a few things, I think, that we as HSPs do that distract us. One of those distractions is not attending to our self-care, meaning that it takes us longer to become empowered. The journey is then lengthened to being a no-nonsense HSP. So a no-nonsense HSP might be unrecognisable to you. It's someone who has integrity, who is able to say what they want to say even if others disagree, and who doesn't take that disagreement to mean that there's anything wrong with having the opinion that you do. Depending on what kind of upbringing you have had, it could be harder for some HSPs than others to actually have a voice. If that's the case, use everything that is at your fingertips, books, the internet, going to therapy, to create an environment where you can actually find out who you are and gain confidence in what you perceive about the world. That perception is there to be shared. And coming back to Elaine Aron and what she talks about as the priestly advisor class, we are there to guide, to think about the bigger issues, to share our insight. We're not there to interfere with the productivity of other people, but we are there to share perspective. And that is even more necessary today than it's ever been. So I encourage you to listen to your intuition, to heal if you need healing, and to recognize that that healing is not the end of the story. It's simply preparing you for the very important work that there is to do as a sensitive person out there in the world. You are needed. You are already powerful. You just need to find a way to express that power in the gentle and strong way that HSPs know how. I hope that this has been a useful video for you to watch. There will be more videos. If you need to get in touch with me, you can see my website at growingunlimited.co.uk. I hope you have a very good day. I hope you know that there are great things to come, and I encourage you to be all that you are. Thanks for listening.